Welcome to the Sheckler Spotlight, where creativity meets purpose and conversation goes deeper. Join host Harrison Sheckler as he sits down with inspiring guests from all walks of life, artists, thinkers, musicians, and everyday heroes, to explore the stories that shape us, uplift us, and connect us. Now here's your host, Harrison Sheckler.
Hi, I'm your host, Harrison Sheckler, and today I'm honored to be speaking with Ben Zobrist, a two-time World Series champion and the 2016 World Series MVP. Over his 14-year MLB career, Ben was known for his versatility, leadership, and quiet consistency, playing for the Tampa Bay Rays, Oakland Athletics, Kansas City Royals, and of course, the Chicago Cubs. Since stepping away from the game in 2019, he's turned his focus toward something arguably even more impactful, advocating for mental and emotional health, particularly among youth athletes. His initiative, Champion Forward, reflects a deep commitment to faith, mentorship, and helping the next generation thrive. Ben now lives in Franklin, Tennessee with his 3 children, where he continues to live out a life of service, purpose, and community. The spotlight is now on you. Ben Zobrist, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Harrison. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to visit with you today. I'd like to begin with just what type of kid were you? What was it like growing up, and where did this lead you onto this path of baseball?
Yeah, well, I think I was a very active kid. You know, if you look, little kids that are super kind of into things, that was me. I was getting into a little bit of trouble early on. Probably, you know, I think my dad said I tried to eat one of those poison packets that came in. Like new shoe box or something like that. And he had to call poison control on me at one point. So that was me early on. But once I got old enough to really get outside and play sports, I love sports, right? I gravitated to sports and anything competitive. I wanted to win. I wanted to be active and move my body and be throwing a ball. It didn't matter what kind of ball, or it could have been a hockey puck or something like that. When the Mighty Ducks thing came out, I was outside trying to hit knuckle pucks, for those of you that watch the Mighty Ducks. And I was just into anything I could get, any sort of team activity, anything where I could feel like I'm winning something. I really wanted to win. So that was me as a young person. I grew up in a small town, very blue collar mentality, Eureka, Illinois, 5,000 people. My dad's a pastor, so we were taught there's a right way and a wrong way to play the game, right? And so that was me trying to figure that out. I was still yelling at referees with my high pitched screams as a third or fourth grader in basketball, but I soon learned to control that as I got older. My parents, the coaches around me helped me see that there's a healthy way to win and a healthy way to lose. And so for me, that journey really began early on, and really enjoyed like I said, any sort of competition I was into. And I really didn't think that it was possible for me to do anything beyond that until I got to the very, very end of my high school career. And that's a story in and of itself. Just getting to college, I never thought that was going to be what I had a chance to do, but eventually I got that opportunity.
And so talk about how you got that opportunity. Where was it where you were like, oh, this is actually the path that I'm going to be on. I'm going to be a Major League Baseball player.
Well, it wasn't something I really dreamed that I was going to be able to do as a young person. It was something that developed over time. The way that I played the game was honestly my biggest vision as a young player was to win a high school state championship.
Okay.
And actually, I was more into basketball than I was baseball growing up. It was my first love. So I was watching a movie like Hoosiers and
Hmm.
captured by like the way that they could take their small town to against the big city and go and win the championship. And so I was like gravitated to those types of stories, the underdog stories, and so I was thinking high school state championship. I mean, that was the biggest thing I could think of as a young person. And I didn't know anybody that ever really played professionally. So and I wasn't getting college scholarship offers. So I was just like, how do we win? Well, when we lost in my senior year and that dream died, uh, I went on to baseball season and we finished the baseball season and lost in our regional there as well. And I was a decent player, but I wasn't all state or anything like that. And I thought I was done. I literally grieved sports from a team aspect after my high school baseball season. Going back to my house, I was grieving it and thought that's the last time I'll do that. I'll ever play a team sport like that. I was going to go to a Bible college and just study the Bible and really for me, my high school coach saw something in me, and he was also my FCA sponsor. He was a man that I really respected, a mentor. And after I graduated, he said, "Hey, there's a scout day that's happening over here. You have to pay $50 to go to this scout day, but there might be some college coaches there that see you and maybe give you an opportunity." And I was like, well, I wasn't banking on that, but I was like, I just to put the uniform on one more time. I'll give it a shot. So I did that, and I met a college coach there from Olivet Nazarene University named Elliot Johnson. Coach Johnson saw something in me that other people didn't see. And with academics, he offered me a academic and athletic scholarship so I could go to this private Christian school up in Chicago. And that's what really led to my diving into baseball and like, okay, I'm baseball all year round. I'm going to work on this. And so it was an open door that God provided through Coach Johnson and kind of really took off. From there, my baseball stuff really took off.
That's amazing. And so when were you drafted into the majors and when was like the moment, oh wow, I'm a Major League Baseball player?
Yeah, I got drafted 2004, and that was kind of a surprise to be drafted as high as I was. I was drafted in the sixth round, so that was a pretty good draft position. But I was a senior, so I was an old guy for a drafted. And so I was a prospect, but not really a high prospect for the organization with Houston. And every level, I just found a way to succeed in those levels. And they'd move me up about every half season because I was an older guy. And I went from low A to another version of single A, high A, and then I went to double A, and then I went to triple A, and I got traded to Tampa Bay, and I was only there for a short period of time, and they traded some of their veteran guys, and they had a big losing season.
Hmm.
So this was my opportunity to get called up. I remember we had $32 in my bank account when I got called up. It was hadn't gotten paid from the previous 2 weeks of play yet. And so we were waiting on that check at the same time as like, you know, dwindling payments for, bills that were going on. And I got called up that day and got sent to, it was August 1st was my first day in the big leagues with Tampa Bay. And I'll never forget running out on that field and just the having chills going, I can't believe I'm playing on TV. I'm running out on a major league field and I'm playing against, Miguel Cabrera and Pudge Rodriguez and Justin Verlander and, all these things. By the way, he's the first guy I had to face for major league pitchers, right? He's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Hmm.
So that was a rough day. I definitely didn't get hit that day, but eventually got my first hit later that week against a not very well-known pitcher named Kurt Schilling, who is also a pretty amazing player. So yeah, that kind of began my major league career at that point.
And then you played on a few teams. You were with the Rays and then the Athletics. And then you also came to Kansas City. So that's where I am right now. I'm in Kansas City. And you won a championship with them. What was that like?
Hey, I loved my time with the Royals, man. It's crazy because actually 30 years before that, when I was just a young active toddler, as I said, my dad was going to Bible college in Belton, Missouri, which is right outside of Kansas City.
Hmm.
And in 1985, when they won, we were there. We were in the city. So it's crazy that as a very, very young boy, I was a part of that. And then 30 years later, I get traded there as a player, and I'm helping them win in 2015, which was unbelievable, incredible experience. that Royals team was super, super special. And they really had things. Um, they had built that organization for a while, right?
Hmm.
It was pretty incredible to be a part of that.
It's pretty cool how things have come full circle. You talk about, your father being in Kansas City or in the area, and then also your first coach was Joe Madden, with the Rays, right? And then the following year in 2016, Joe Madden was your manager as well.
Yeah, that's right. That was that was another part of my story that I couldn't have written, right? I mean, I was in the major leagues for 12 years, 12 plus years, parts of 14 seasons, and Joe Madden was my manager every year except for one. And it was the year I got traded to Oakland and Kansas City and one, so he was really my guy. I mean, he was the guy that believed in me as a young player when I was really struggling in the big leagues. He was the one that told me I was going to play for 10 plus years. And he also was a guy that ran me out on the field in multiple different positions. And so I have a lot of the credit of my career to give to Joe because of the opportunities I got through him and the way he believed in me as a player. So he's really an exceptional mind in
Hmm.
baseball, a really unique mind in baseball. And I was fortunate that I came along at the right time when he was managing Tampa Bay. And I think we were a great partnership as far as players and managers go. It felt like I understood Joe. I understood the way he managed the game. I understood the way he liked to think outside of the box, and I appreciated that at the same time as staying disciplined to the fundamentals and the traditional side of the game that I was taught as a young
Hmm.
player, right? So there was a couple times he had some super wacky ideas. Mike Messina, who's also an incredible pitcher, had an incredible career. He had incredible splits against left-handed hitters, and I was a switch hitter, so I would have batted lefty against him. And Joe's like, "Hey, I want you to go up today. This is in Yankee Stadium against Jeter and all those guys, Mariano Rivera and Alex Rodriguez and stuff." He's like, "I want you to go up today and bat right-handed." And I was like, "I haven't done that since I was like a kid. You know, I don't even know if I can still bat right-handed against a right-handed pitcher. It'll feel like I'm standing upside down." And Joe's like, "Just trust me on this. Just trust me. Just give it a shot, you know?" And I was like, "All right." Sure enough, I hit a double my first at bat. I'm like, he must know something I don't know, like,
Yeah, really.
right? So he definitely had some moments in my career that he thought outside the box, and I just went with it. And more often than not, it worked because we had the majority of our seasons were winning seasons, and we obviously won a World Series together in Chicago, which was one of the most special experiences I've ever had.
Now you had a full year with the Cubs to prepare and uh, you know, in comparison to Kansas City, because you came in for that championship halfway through the season in July. Um, what was kind of the difference between the two championships? I mean, obviously over 100 year drought with the Cubs, um, but how would you compare those two?
Well, Kansas City, I was coming into a team that was already assembled. They had already
Hmm.
built something incredible there, and I was a piece that they thought they needed at the trade deadline to kind of get them over the top. They had already won the division, basically. I mean, they had 2 months left in the season, but they were up by 10 games
Hmm.
by the end of July when I got traded there. So Alex Gordon and like Mike Moustakas and just various players. Wade Davis was on that team who was a former teammate of mine in Tampa Bay. Greg Holland was a closer that had gotten hurt, and everybody knew about him at the time. And there was so many good young players. Salvador Perez was already a young catcher on that team and still playing now and doing really well. This was a team that was already ready to win, and they had won the previous year. They were like a game away from potentially winning, I think, with against the Giants the previous year, right? So
Hmm.
they were like pulled me in, and I got there, and I just found a way in that lineup. It worked. It worked well right away, and they welcomed me in. And watching that team battle, they were incredible with two strikes, and we had some really tight games in the postseason.
Hmm.
11 out of the 17 games, the 11 wins. I think you have to win 11 out of maybe 17 postseason games or whatever it ends up being. And of the wins that we had, we came from behind like maybe 8 out of the 11 games.
Wow.
After the fifth inning, it's a crazy stat. I can't remember the exact stat on it, but it was a come from behind team, and it was a team that did not give in late in the game. And it was watching that team win was and being a part of that. I if my career had ended at that point, I would have been super happy with it. It was unbelievable. A million people at the parade, like, and Kansas City's not a big city, right? It's like
No.
a 700,000 or whatever. People came from all over the surrounding states to come to that, and it was incredible. And it hadn't been done for a while. That was pre all the Chiefs winning years, right? So that was like when the city was still getting experiencing parades for the first time. Now they're like bored with it probably from all the Chiefs stuff. I don't know.
Been there, done that.
I don't know, but I will say that felt special enough that if my career had ended, I would have been so happy with that. And people still think that I was the MVP of that World Series, and I wasn't. Like I did have a great playoffs run and a good World Series there, but Salvador Perez is the MVP of that team, and I'm glad he was, right? And I think, actually I would have re-signed with Kansas City. For your KC listeners, like just know I loved KC. I would have re-signed. They could really with their budget for free agents that offseason, they could only sign either me or Alex Gordon. And Alex Gordon is homegrown, Royals Hall of Famer, needs to be, and Alex, he deserved, Gordo deserved to be the guy that got that contract with them, and I'm happy he did. So the Cubs were who came along to me. So then I'm at the beginning of the year, and we know we got Jason Hayward coming in, myself, John Lackey, John Lester had just come the year before with David Ross, and you got all these young guys like Rizzo and Brian and Baez and Schwarber and these guys that were studs,
Hmm.
going to be studs. And they had already been there for a year. I'm like, this is the perfect mix to join this team. And it's Joe Madden, right? It's my guy.
Hmm.
So Joe's like, Zoe, you got to come over here. You got to come over here. You got to come over here. So I'm like, if I can sign in Chicago with the Cubs, that would be amazing. It all worked out. I got there. And Joe had this mantra early in the season called embrace the target. And you have to, as a team, you have to realize when everybody's looking at you and going, these guys are the team to beat now. They've just added some major veteran pieces. They've got great young talent. There's very little weak spots on that team, right? And so we had to start off, and thankfully we started off hot, right? We got ahead early in that season. And so by June, we had a big lead that year. So we kind of knew by September we were going to clinch this thing and in the division anyways, but none of that mattered to us. It was like our business would not be done until we made it to the World Series and won the World Series. Obviously, it's 108 years. Like that's the penultimate championship to win because it's been so long up to that point. So, gosh, there was a lot of pressure for that playoff series. And thankfully, we survived the series against the Giants. The Dodgers, we played a series against them and we were down in that series and we came back and took that series from them by winning a really crucial game in Dodger Stadium when we were down in that series. And we got to the World Series and we found ourselves down 3 games to 1 against Cleveland. And that was just an epic comeback, right? I mean, it's hard to compare these two. You asked that question. How do
Yeah.
you compare when you've got, man, my childhood team that I watched win, early on at 5 years old, and then I'm 30 years later, I'm 35 as a veteran, winning with the Royals. Like this is a dream come true, right? A million people. And then you go to the Cubs,
Hmm.
and they haven't won in 108 years. You're part of that comeback and winning, and then I get the MVP at that series, which is you know, I was not prepared for at all. I was not expecting nor prepared for. And it was a whirlwind. It was crazy. 7 million people at that parade or whatever
I think
in
it was in like top
Chicago.
10 biggest gatherings or something like that at the
Yeah, it was
time.
in the top 10 gatherings, peaceful gatherings in world history,
Hmm.
right? That's an epic parade of any parade. And to be in the center of all that and then to be asked to go to Jimmy Fallon and Conan O'Brien and Disney World on a private jet and the craziness that ensued in my life in the next week after that, it was really hard to take. And so when I'm doing a lot of speaking now, and I like to go out and try to inspire people in various ways. And usually I'll tell part of that story of what happened. Yeah, I was on a mountaintop, but gosh, sometimes it's hard to breathe. There's not
Hmm.
much oxygen at the top of Mount Everest where I was as an athlete. And I had some work to do internally to try to come back from that.
Well, let's go into that. You talked about how, well, you speak openly about your faith, and there's something that I really admire about you. You grew up, you said your father was a pastor, right?
That's right.
And so you ha already have that experience. My grandpa was a pastor. He actually went to Olivet, and then later at seminary. But so my dad, was a pastor's son, and you always gonna have, at least for me, there's always like, oh, those are the pastor's kids, and are
Yeah.
they gonna rebel? What was that experience with faith early on, and then throughout your career, leading up to these great achievements?
Yeah. Well, my personality, I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to feel like I was doing the right thing. And so if I felt like I did the wrong thing, I would have a lot of guilt and shame and put that on myself. And I, to a certain degree, kind of believed that God was disappointed in me when I made mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And to a certain degree, I was feeling some of the shame that I felt like maybe he was putting on me. And I realized later that that wasn't the case, and that it's more like a desire, a desire to be uh, made whole again, right? After
Mm-hmm.
kind of feeling like you're kind of pulled apart and pulled into pieces, and I felt like during that period of time that I got, I'll say the word depressed. I had depressive symptoms for sure. I I definitely was trying to lean into that faith, but feeling like, wow, my expectations on the field, I could always try to meet that. As a young person, I could combine my faith and my performance because I was performing well, I felt good about myself. If I was performing well as a Christian, I felt good about myself. If I felt like I was making mistakes on the field, I didn't feel good. If I felt like I was making mistakes in my faith, I didn't feel good, right? So it was just like performance-based mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I only felt like I was truly enough for God if I was performing well.
Mm-hmm.
And then there came this point where I performed so well athletically that the social expectations for me were beyond what I had ever experienced. And I always felt like when people asked me to do things, I could try to say yes and be everything for everybody and try to meet those expectations and feel like I was, that maybe I'm doing well for you, God, because I'm trying to help people and say yes to them and serve. But at that point, with the World Series win, it was way too much for me to do. And I had to learn to say no and disappoint people and people not understand what I needed to get healthy and to get back to myself again after all that. That was a very, very hard time. It was a time of testing in my faith of seeing what does God really expect of me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and does he expect me to try to meet all these demands and all these things that people want from me? And he really was okay with me saying no. That's what I realized is he was okay with me stopping the music and saying, "Hey, I need to just, heal and spend some time alone here and just get to a healthy place again." And I that was the first time I felt like enough when I wasn't performing, to be honest, Harrison. Before that, I felt like I'm enough because I'm working really hard to try to be the best version of myself. And God is happy with me because of that. And I knew the gospel. I knew the words that said, well, Jesus died on the cross for my sins. And so it's what he's done on the cross for me that makes my faith real and makes me know that I'm assured of my salvation before God. And I knew that intellectually, but I didn't truly feel that until I was not performing as a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was where my Christianity and my faith in God just took a huge leap forward, and then I felt like I could finally rest without performing. And that's really hard for an athlete. That's really hard for a musician. That's really
Yep.
hard for a creative. Like, because you're always looking for somebody to validate, or the stats to validate for an athlete. You're looking for something to validate your value. And it was the first time I literally couldn't point to anything that was validating what, what I felt like. And I just was like, I need to know that it's okay if I choose to just lay down and do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time I felt like, God loved me in my worst place. And I think that's a really important thing for anybody that grows up a pastor's kid or grows up in the church. Is it's easy to think, okay, everybody needs me to toe the line and do the right things all the time. And if you try to do that, I mean, it's great. You have a pure heart to try to live the right kind of life, but ultimately, that's not the expectation. The expectation is, I think, from God's standpoint, is that we're going to bring our brokenness, we're going to bring our hurt, we're going to bring our pain, we're going to bring our human struggles to Him at the foot of the cross, lay it there, and realize Jesus was the only true hero. He's the only one that could handle it all the way through to the grave and then back from the grave, right?
Amen.
And that for me is something I knew intellectually, but I really needed to feel that he was, I didn't have to do anything. And it was beautiful. So thanks for letting me share a little bit about that. I
Oh,
mean,
of
I know a lot
course.
of people have different views of their faith and their connection with God, but for me, it was very much a performance-based mindset that I needed to be reformed in me in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of this book I read a long time ago, and it just popped in my head. I don't know if you've heard the book. I'm not a fan, but I remember they talked specifically about I'm forgetting the author at the moment, but um, talks about there's so many people who know about Jesus, and you talked about, I know the gospel, I've been surrounded by it, and from for listeners, I'm the director of music at a church, and so I'm at services all the time, and it's one thing to be part of the church, but and to know about Jesus and God, but do we actually know him? Do we actually have that relationship with him? He's not just this. Well, in the book, they use this example of a baseball team, and they say, there's all these players on the field, and we know, the stats of the first baseman. We know this guy, has this average versus this pitcher. We know the guy likes, line dancing in his free time, whatever, we know a lot about these players, but we don't actually know them, have that personal relationships. We're the fans in the stands,
Yeah.
and so we only see one side, um, one side to the whole picture. And it's important for us with our relationship with Jesus, not to just know a lot about him, but to have that personal connection and realize that he's we can be more than a fan, we can be a follower, and he will have that personal connection if we let him in. It's not just a certain facade or surface level. So um, it's so important, and it sounds like you reach that level of having more of a personal relationship with God.
Well, the words that come to mind are presence and experience. And before this moment in my life, I certainly had an experience with God. I certainly had a relationship with God based on truth, based on what I believed was true for me, based on what I believed is true in the Bible, based on what I believe is true about God and about Jesus, right? I had a relationship, but to feel the presence and have those experiences with God where I felt him being compassionate to me.
Hmm.
I felt him like as a tender father reaching down and saying, "I'm with you. Don't worry. I got you. I want to hear it. Bring it all to me." Like you don't have to curate yourself. Like it's like if a parent I have kids, if I go to my kids and I know that they're only going to tell me everything that they need to curate ahead of time so that I get the best version of themselves. I don't get any other version but the best possible version. Well, they're going to stay away from me until they feel like they've done everything perfectly, right? To present to me, right? So I'm not really having much presence with them because they're only showing me the curated, perfected version of themselves. Whereas as human beings, we know that we can't be that, right? And so if we realize that God actually wants us to have that present experience with Him, even when we're having a really bad day, even when we're not performing well, like He wants to hear us talk to Him about that. It's not like He doesn't understand it and know it already, right? Because He's God. So for me, it was getting to that place of, wow, so He actually wants to hear me complain. Other people don't want to hear me complain.
They want
That's
you
just
at your best.
negativity, right? But actually he can take it. He's the one he's the one presence that we can have in our life that can understand and hold every bit of our challenges, struggles, celebrations, right? He's the one that kind of keeps me balanced when I want to get arrogant or prideful. And he also keeps me balanced when I want to get shameful towards myself
Mm,
or angry at myself, right? And he reminds me of the things that like a good father would remind you of, right? He reminds you of those things. So we're all imperfect beings, but I think that's where I started having an experience and a presence with God that was a little bit more personal and more intimate.
So when you were at the top and all these great things were happening after the World Series win, um, but you were feeling, depressed, you found God, but who were the people that helped you along the way? Were there anyone that you could lean on?
Yeah, there was several people. I mean, my family for sure has. I think my parents were growing up. We were thinking of like struggles with mental health as well. You just have to read enough Bible verses, and you really gotta be able to confess your sins and whatever's going on, and eventually you'll kind of be relieved of a lot of that. And I do think that when it is a spiritual issue that definitely there's a need for some of that. And I think my issue was a little bit more socially induced than spiritually induced. It was
Sure.
a little bit of social anxiety, overwhelm, physical exhaustion, and chemically my body was just like reacting to a lot of that. Too much adrenaline over time, over and over and over and over again, and then you crash, but there's still a lot of expectations on you.
Hmm.
I was experiencing a mental health challenge. And so through all that, my family, my parents gained a lot of compassion
Mm,
for me and for what I was going through. And because they didn't understand either at the time, we were all kind of confused as to what was happening. And it took me a while to really come out of that. It took me 2 to 3 months. And I showed back up at spring training in 17 and I was still struggling, but at least able to go do my job and ended up having a decent year in 17. Things changed and I got back to normal a month or two into the year, but it was something I felt like I couldn't talk about because if you talk about that publicly at the time, people were going to think there's a problem. Like we need to put him on antidepressants or we need to this or that. Like it would have been a story that I didn't want to distract the team from what the team was going for again, right? That trying to repeat or something like that. And I think as a professional athlete or a musician or an actor that is trying to perform in front of thousands of people all the time, the last thing you want to do is disappoint people that have paid tickets to come see your show,
hmm.
right? And like I gotta believe that's so hard for an artist. That's so hard for somebody that has a call time. That's an actor. It's like, oh, sorry, it's not that I'm just sick with the physical flu. I'm like, just because people used to think of it as like there's a stigma. You're weak. You're weak if you say that there's a mental health challenge. Now we're starting to erase some of that because people are starting to talk about it. It's becoming more available to say, hey, I just need to take mental health check. like let's take some time and just get healthy. It's going in the right direction, but it's still in 2016 and 17. I didn't feel like I could do that, right? So I had family members, and then once I had a therapist that I was talking to on a regular basis, and I had best friends that I was sharing things with and talking about. And the biggest thing that I probably started to do right at the end of my career is I started doing a regular men's emotional skill check-in.
Mm.
And it building emotional intelligence was one of the most important things for me to get mentally healthy. And I was going through a really tough time personally, even then, 3 years after this. And so I really had to spend that time to dig in with God, to dig in with myself, my own heart, to dig in with the people in my life that I trusted that could hold what I was going through. And I found some safe places to talk about that. And honestly, that's one of the challenges that I think the church has is it hasn't really been a safe place for a lot of people to come and bring their brokenness.
Hmm.
Despite what the gospel says it should be, we don't always propel the compassion and the empathy that we should as a body of Christ. And if we do that better, I think we're going to be more in line with what Christ would have wanted us to do. And so that's what I found. I found spaces where I could be hurt and broken and in pain, and you have to find multiple of those because there's no one person in your life that can really hold all of that. So you have to have different places to hold all the challenges and struggles you might be going through. But I found that, and that was really a huge important part of my healing in that time.
So what would your advice be for people who are going through similar situations? What would be like the first steps that they should take?
Yeah. Well, the first step is to recognize your self-talk when you're beating yourself up and build some self-compassion and
Mm.
empathy. And if you read scripture in the Bible, you're going to see truly a God who loves and is patient and long suffering with our weaknesses. That's what you will find. If you read all the way through the scripture, you will find that, right? And sometimes people want to point out one passage here or there and like take it out of context. You got to take the whole thing into play to understand who God is and who Jesus is and the compassion that they have for our challenges and our brokenness on a daily basis, right? So first thing is self-compassion. The next thing is building, like I said, safe spaces, a compassionate community around you of people that I can share something. And sometimes you got to dip your toe in the water with somebody before you realize whether they can or can't hold what you're trying to ask them to hold for you. I think particularly for men, especially men that are in middle age that have families that don't feel like they can drop the ball at all, uh, we have to provide safe places for each other to be able to share some of these challenges and brokenness, and then spur each other on toward love and good works to encourage each other to stay the course and to be patient with their own struggles and to continue to share it over and over again, right? It doesn't end because, oh yeah, I went to this conference and I dropped off a load of things I've been struggling with. No, you got to do it on a regular basis. I tell the people in Champion Forward, our program where we work on this on a regular basis, this is something for every parent to model. We got to model this on a regular basis in front of our kids where, hey, I'm struggling today. I'm feeling this and this and this. If we don't share our feelings at all with our families, well, how do you expect them to feel safe sharing their feelings with you? It can't just be the rah rah, you did a great job, celebratory feelings. It has to also be the today I really stunk it up and I feel bad about that. I feel shame and that's just a normal human thing to feel. So we have to be able to find and build those safe places, not only for ourselves, but for people. The last thing I would say is if you don't, if you've never really connected with God
Mm.
and you've never really been intimate with God, you just brought a curated version of yourself, or maybe you just have some things against him because of some of the stuff that you've been through in your life. Give it another shot. And this time, actually share the brokenness, the broken parts of you, share the qualms and the challenges and the anger that you may have toward God because of what's happened in your life or happening in your life. And trust me, if you're talking to the same person I'm talking to, like there is compassion there. There's space there, right? And so put those together and it's, do I have a healthy connection with myself? Do I have a healthy connection with others? And do I have a healthy connection with God? And if you can do that, if you can work on those things, eventually you're going to come out of the things that you're struggling with. I'm not saying you're not going to continue to struggle. I'm not saying you don't need medication. I'm not saying you don't need to see a therapist or a psychiatrist. You may need all those things. I don't know. Everybody's got different challenges, but if you work on those three things on a regular basis, life will get better. Like your ability to be resilient in the face of your challenges will get better. I really
So
believe.
you really worked on healing yourself, but you've also uh, decided to help others and finding mental health through Champion Forward. Could you tell our audience what is this Champion Forward initiative? What are they about, and who are they?
Yeah, well, when I retired from baseball, because of my experiences with mental health challenges, I got involved in two mental health organizations on the board. One was a local one here in Franklin called the Refuge Center for Counseling here in Tennessee. They do amazing work locally around the Nashville area, sliding scale, but incredible therapists there that do great work. Also, a national organization, the American Psychiatric Association Foundation, asked me to be their uh, first athlete board member. Let's just say that. They wanted to connect with athletes and say, hey, there's something we need to do more for the athletic community. And they've got a new initiative called the Where We Play Initiative, which is really cool. So through being a part of those things, I was like, okay, where is the gap? Where is there a gap that may need a little bit of extra work? And one thing I realized as I went through professional sports is my people are athletes for sure because I was an athlete for as long as I was. Also, the coaches, the support staff, the people around the athletes, the parents. Now I'm a parent of young athletes, right? So I'm like, what can we do to provide something for young athletes, parents, and coaches that will help them get on the right path? They may not be struggling like I was, but there are still the same challenges. And one thing I saw throughout my sports tenure is I had access to the best physical therapists. I had access to the best coaches. I had access to the best sports psychologists. I even had access to mental health services. I just never used them. I didn't know where's the go between. If I'm not in need of psychiatric care or psychological counseling,
Mhm.
but I'm just struggling with the feelings and the mental challenges around the transition between being great and not being great and having a good season and then having a terrible season. If I'm struggling with all that, or I'm trying to help my kid who's struggling with that, what can I do? And so Champion Forward was something that I birthed with a buddy of mine named John Harrison, who had some of his own struggles that led to, as an athlete, that led to some addiction challenges that he dealt with. We came together and we said, let's build something that builds what we see as the middle ground between sports psychological mental skills and mental health issues
Mm.
is emotional intelligence. Because the emotional skills that are necessary, they transcend the athletic field. They cross over into the other roles that you have of father, husband, brother, friend, churchgoer, whatever it is. There are other roles that you carry besides athlete. And so we have to find ways to transition well and to relate well, not only to what we're feeling as an individual, but our relationships around the team, around the families, around whatever, and then our relationship ultimately with God. So we developed a program. We're doing it. It's an ambassador program that helps teach some of these skills necessary to deal with the sports experience. So the skills that we teach through our program basically are emotional intelligence skills that I learned over time. I realized there's a big gap. I was doing this in my men's group stuff. I'm like, why was I not introduced to this as a young athlete? This would have really helped me.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, let's just develop something that will start with ambassadors that are passionate about taking this into their family, into their team, into their community. We'll plug into them and then we'll let them make the difference, right? Because we can't talk to everybody. We can't convince everybody that this is needed. But if they're already convinced that it's needed, let's give them the tools. With the new challenges of sports now, with the NIL, and kids are getting paid now to play sports in high school, even. It's crazy. With that kind of stuff happening, we are professionalizing what used to be youth sports.
Hmm.
Youth sports used to be about just developing a kid, character development, helping them. Now college athletes are dealing with mental health at a greater clip than the average academic student. That's a problem. It used to be the other way around. It used to be helpful to be an athlete in college for your mental health. Now it's harder because there's so much pressure on these young athletes. And so we got to give them new tools. That's
Hmm.
why I think this tool that we've developed is really valuable and we can really make a difference in mental health long term. We're not saying we're a mental health organization. We are a mental skills more,
Hmm.
emotional skills organization. And we try to keep those boundaries clear where when somebody's dealing with a true mental health challenge like I was, we're going to try to connect them to quality therapy, quality counselors, quality people that are trained to deal with the mental health challenges, where we're trying to be the laymen who are saying, hey, let's just learn how to have quality emotional conversations around what just happened.
Hmm.
What just happened at school? What just happened in your relationship? What just happened on the field? Let's have some quality relationships and figure out how we can do that as a unit so that everybody knows we can create safe spaces even in the athletic environment. Just
What
hard,
is
hard to do.
what has been the reception with some of the people you've worked with?
It's been incredible. Our team, John, Jordan, Hannah, some other people, the ambassadors. Uh, our first cohorts of ambassadors that have gone through have had raving reviews and have had incredible feedback that have helped us kind of continue to dial this in. We'll keep dialing it in to perfect it and make it better, but they're taking this now into their school systems, into
Awesome.
their high school teams, their college programs, and that's going to be the way that the ambassadors are going to be the world changers. They're going to be the sports experience changers over time, and that's what we're hoping continues to happen. It's been incredible though to see it start to grow.
Wow. So when you meet with some of these people and the ambassadors meet with, what's like the initial steps or how do you get involved with CF? And
Yeah. Well, the way to get involved is we have a Instagram account, we have a website. If you go to championforward.org or the champion forward, just type in champion, no S. A lot of people say champions forward, champion forward, no S. On Instagram, you'll find our page there, and there's a link tree that has the program, website, all that stuff they can get connected to. Like I said, the website, championforward.org. And then I'm out and about speaking now, right? Quite a bit. And so I'm trying to get the word out about this to a lot of athletes, parents, and coaches. And you can also find all those things by going to my Instagram. Ben Zobrist 18 is my Instagram as well. And that's how I, got connected to you a little bit recently and seeing some of your stuff. So, dude, I love the fact, first of all, that you are a creative that sees other creativities because I think it's a challenge for athletes to see themselves as creatives,
hmm.
but we have to learn like there is a part of what we do that's very creative and you have to be creative. To get into that flow performance state, you have to be able to accept the unique version of yourself and put it out there in front of everybody on the field and let that play out, right?
Hmm.
Just like a musician would do behind a piano or behind a microphone, or an actor would do when somebody says action, right? There's more creativity in the everyday, even numbers types of games than we realize, I think. And so I like that you're able to see that.
Well, thank you. No, I think that's a great point. And, um, your background is in athletics, and then my background is mostly music and the performance aspect of playing the piano. And I can see that something like this might actually help with those other areas as well, because it's the same. Um, you're dealing with the same things, the performance anxiety and trying to reach a certain level, but then also being okay with where you're at and where God, what his plan is at this certain moment in life and just settling. I mean, be still and know I am God, being
Yeah.
okay with that and trusting in him. So I could see that Champion Ford could be champions of music and champions of a lot of different areas.
Yeah, I think you have to balance. Any performer has to balance trying to be excellent, being the
Hmm.
best version of themselves, and then knowing at the end of the performance, sometimes it wasn't. Right? So it's
That's
like
so difficult. So
it's so
difficult.
difficult. It doesn't matter if you're playing in a church or playing on a stage of thousands of people. You know whether you were at your best or not. And people are going to come up at the end and be like, "Wow, great job," and you're like, I actually really stunk today."
Yeah.
Right? And there's going to be times where you feel like you did your best and it still wasn't enough.
Hmm.
And a lot of athletes look at that when they look at their numbers and go, "Man, I gave it everything, but I blew it. I went 3 for 4, but the last at bat was the most important for the team, and I struck out to end the game." Right? So there's all these competing emotions of I feel really good about this part, but not so good about that. And we're so used to just having one feeling. I either feel really good and fine, or I feel really bad and shamed, or something
Hmm.
like that, or afraid. And we have to realize as human beings, we're so complex and complicated, and you can actually have competing emotions going on at the same time until you have a safe space where you can say, yeah, I'm feeling fear and I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling shame and I'm feeling confident, about different things going on at the same time. When you let that out, there is and a scientific evidence that that takes pressure off
Mm.
because now I've turned the valve and let some of that come out of my tank that was full of emotion. Now you have more capacity to receive in the next performance because every performance there's highs and lows and ups and downs and a lot of emotion comes in, but you have to keep your composure, right? That's the challenge for a performer is I'm feeling a lot of things, but I got to execute the next part of this performance, right? And so we have to have the safe place after or before those moments with safe people to say,
Hmm.
well, this is what I was really feeling, and this is what I was really going through. That's the human side. And then you check into the hero side during the performance, right?
Hmm.
And so those are challenges that I love going out and speaking about that to people and kind of helping them realize it's okay to be struggling with that balance because we're trying to be heroes in our roles every day, but we're also going to have the human side of us that comes in and brings us back to earth.
Exactly. No, I think this is actually helpful for me to hear because I'm preparing for a big performance on the 23rd coming up because I'm finishing my doctorate in piano performance.
Ah,
And so like there's a huge mental struggle of me being a full-time I'm a professor at a college. I am, a full-time music director, and then I'm also finishing up my doctorate. And there's just so many different
busy
things that I'm
guy,
trying.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know.
absolutely.
Yeah, to say the least, busy guy.
Amazing.
And, it's really exciting meeting these milestones, but there is that mental aspect of where you just always have to be on. And so thank you for saying these things because it kind of like puts things into perspective. Like, I need to have those people around me that whatever happens, they can we can talk about it and we can realize the situation and so yeah, so that's like my next big thing is this performance and I'm gonna put in the work to do well but also hopefully have that mental clarity and balance that you can do all the preparation but if you don't reach that perfect performance it's okay and then how do you deal with that.
Yeah, we all have to have the margin and the buffer zones and
Mm-hmm.
people that can be there with us. Because the performance world, there is no margin.
No.
As you
Oh.
know, the higher you go with performance, the more excellent you become. You become a doctorate, the expectations are higher for performing. right?
Hmm.
So the margin for error is much slimmer. It's not like you're not back in eighth grade working on this. This is like you're a professional at this thing at this point. And so the major league guys I get a chance to talk to still, that's what they're dealing with. They have very, very slim margins for error, which means they have to build in other margins, buffer zones, and other parts of their life that give them the space
Mm.
to be truly human, and so that they can go back into those realms, the performance realms, where they can get into their hero state and be really, really fine and detailed with even critical at times of their own performance, so that they can stay at that high performance level, right? Because to be a great performer, you gotta be that keyed in to every little mini mistake, right?
Yeah, you're hyper aware of many things, and it's a big adrenaline rush. And yeah, no, it's hard to balance. So I'm just
Yeah.
thankful that there's people out there like you who are taking the initiative to help others with this thing that impacts a lot of people in a lot of different careers. So thank you,
Oh
and
man.
thank you for champion forward. We appreciate it.
Well, I think it's part of what God planned for me. That's why he had me go through a lot of the things that I went through, was to start to do this work, right?
Hmm.
And to bring this work to other people on a regular basis. So yeah, Harrison, if I had my advice for you, it would be finding those people, finding those spaces. Where are the buffer? Because you're a very busy guy and you got a lot of good things going for you, but you're performing really high and well and efficient in a lot of these areas, which also means there may not be much room for you to bring the broken parts of you and the hurt and the challenged parts of you. But we all have them, right?
Hmm.
There's not any one of us that doesn't have the challenges and struggles that we're dealing with on a regular basis. So we've got to have, not in front of everybody. I'm not saying that, right? I'm just saying you have to have certain people in certain spaces that you can truly be everything, bring everything that you're feeling into that moment. So, yeah, dude, let's get on it. Join the ambassador program.
Yeah, yeah, I'm down. I'm in. I'm in. You heard it here first. I'm in. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I didn't know I was going to get a pep talk today. This is awesome. This is exciting for me.
That's what I'm here for, man.
I appreciate you. Well, we're coming close to the end of our podcast, but I just have a few more questions.
Sure.
Uh, the importance of being a father and how all of these things that have that you've learned through dealing with mental health and just exceeding at a high level, how does that translate into being a father and then your relationship, with kids? And because I think a lot of parents, that's another thing they have to balance in life.
That's a great question. I would say that is probably the hardest thing that I deal with right now. Trying to balance doing a lot of things well, and then at 9 p.m. at night, still trying to do well in that role of being patient in getting my kids to bed and making sure they've done all the things that they need to do, and then also doing laundry and doing dishes and trying to keep the house clean. And like any parent knows, like it's a lot to try to,
Hmm.
especially a single parent. I'm in a single parent situation, so it is a lot to try to do. Uh, I want to bring up a book that has been really important for us with Champion Forward that John and I have gotten privy to. It's called Never Enough by Jennifer Breheny Wallace. And she did an incredible job with research in there of showing what do kids really need, and what are they really feeling right now in this generation. And a lot of, like my kids are in what you would call a super zip code, where almost all parents are college educated and are making a certain above a certain threshold of money per year. And my kids go to a private school, and so their expectations are very high.
Hmm.
And whether I say it or not, my kids are going to have high expectations, right? And because of that, we have to realize what are the things that they need versus the things that they may want to achieve, right? And I think it's easy as a parent to try to just keep the bar at a certain level and say, hey, I expect this. My expectations are this. And I'm not saying we shouldn't, help our kids rise to the occasion. Like my expectations are more in how they communicate and how they focus on one thing at a time to get done than they are like, I need you to make it to this school, or I need you to get this grade, or I need you to perform this well on the test or on this in this athletic activity. I think when we get into these big, grand expectations for our kids, it's a challenge for them to ever meet those. And
Hmm.
frankly, that's really not what she's going to express in that book. If you read it, she doesn't say that that's the important thing. One of the important things for them is that they learn that they are an integral part of keeping the house running. So giving them chores is simple thing that actually gives them joy. Like they don't realize it when they're starting, they're going to complain about it, but those are things that actually help them feel purpose in their life, you know? And so I'm learning from people like her, like what is it that a kid really needs? And I'm trying to be patient with myself as a parent because I'm doing this for the first time. I have a
Hmm.
16-year-old driver for the first time. So for the first time, I'm learning by myself how to try to parent a kid that's doing that. Right. And so I have a 13-year-old, I have a 9-year-old. I like they're at different stages and they're
Hmm.
different people. So I can't talk to them all the same way. And I I at the end of the day sometimes am at the end of myself. Right. So I got to be able to not only give them grace that it's hard to grow up. It's hard to try to learn all these things for the first time. It's also hard to try to parent all these things for the first time. That's why grandparents are the happiest people around with kids because they're like, first of all, I can only do this for a couple hours, then I pass them back to their parent
Yeah.
and before 9 p.m. when I'm exhausted, right? Like, and they've already been through it. So they kind of have an idea of what they really want to do and not do,
Hmm.
right? Sometimes you learn after the fact, oh, I shouldn't have done that as a parent. And so I have a lot of shame in my parenting, to be honest, at times because I'm doing my best, but sometimes it just doesn't feel like enough. And I feel like never enough. But the truth is, if I am sharing my heart and I'm connecting, if the main thing that I want with my kids is quality connection with myself, quality connection with them, and then quality connection with God. If I'm doing that, I'm doing the best I can do. And I'm not going to get it perfect, and that's okay because nobody's perfect. And you're going to keep working on being the best version of yourself. But I'm trying to bring myself back to that as a parent. Like, just Ben, are you trying to connect with your kids at
Hmm.
whatever level they're at? Are you trying to connect in the moments and then doing your best at work and doing, the other roles that you have are important too. But at the end of the day, I want them to feel like their dad loved them and wanted to be connected to them. And if they catch that from me, they're catching so much of what they need in the future. Get connected to the people around you, Don't look at the device, look in the eyes of the person next to you, right? I mean, I could go on and on about devices. We won't go into that today, but like, I mean, we're trying to work with teenagers, parents, and coaches. Of course, we're going to talk about device usage at times, right? Because that's distracting all of us
Hmm.
from those quality connections and being real with each other at times. So it's definitely one of the things that we try to silence at times. And I fight that battle, just like every other parent. I fight that battle. I fight it with myself. How much am I using my phone? And when is it a tool and when is it a distraction to what I need to be doing? So those are all challenges.
Yeah, definitely. It's important to be in the moment, because life's short and things pass you by. And the most important thing we have is these relationships with the people around us and how we interact with them. I think it's so important, and you've given us I mean, that's just great advice. So thank you for that. And it sounds like you're staying pretty balanced. It sounds like you're on the right path, Ben. So
Well, but if you hear me, you're listening. hopefully this is coming out. I don't have it figured out. And that's the thing that I want people to realize is it's you actually can be at peace and content when you don't have it figured out, believe
Yeah,
it or not.
coming
And
to
but the
grips with
way to
that.
do that is when you know, okay, my path is through connection. I got to connect to myself. I got to connect to the people around me. I got to connect to God. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to perform in all those realms. I got to perform in some realms.
Hmm.
I got to show up at the time Harrison tells me to show up for the podcast. But then I need to show up with presence,
Hmm.
right? Show up with the real me and the authenticity that you really want to be with people. And that's where connection happens, right? So the more we can do that, yeah, you don't have it figured out, but you're actually not alone in that, right? And we know that the big epidemic here is not some sort of disease; it's loneliness in our problem in our culture is loneliness more than it's anything else. So if you want to be connected to others, you have to be the person that is willing to be vulnerable. You got to be willing to open up. You got to be willing to say more,
Hmm.
And if you're the person on the other side of that, don't shut it down. Say, hey, share more. Thank you for sharing. Don't try to fix them. Don't try to give them every tip. Some people might be listening going, oh, tell me what you do for this and this and this. I'm going to say, no, I'm not going to. No, because that's for you to decide. But I will say, get connected. Do
Hmm.
the things that connect you to yourself, do the things that connect you to others, and do the things that connect you to God. And if you're doing those things, that you're going to start to get creative on what other things help you feel the way you want to feel, right? So, I mean, I love those inspirational moments of challenge because I'm like, okay, if I can have a little bit of free time to think about what actually happened there, what I'm feeling about that, then I might come up with a new way to do that next time,
Hmm.
right? If I'm rushing from thing to thing and I'm trying to be overactive to suppress the way I'm feeling, right? Tons of activity can be an easy way to distract yourself from what you're feeling. Then I'm probably going to miss that creative moment, right? So you have to have some margin of silence, some margin with other people to process, some margin to process with yourself and with God. If like we're talking about buffers and margin, man, that's where the creativity actually happens and you can come up with new ways to do things.
Oh, it's so true. I do a lot of composing, and if I don't like set some time to just be still, just let that creative muse or the what I say the Holy Spirit come and inspire me, it just doesn't happen. But when I do take that time, some of my best work comes in those times of inspiration because I slowed myself down and I realized I need that balance between you. I mean, you just can't 24/7 just boom, 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 go, go, go. And I've started to realize that I'm one of those high performing people that I overload my schedule. And I'm like, I have to just
Same
pack it
here.
all in. I could do everything, but you can't. You have to realize that you need that balance. And like you said, the creativity aspect of it, it needs time to just kind of settle and work its way in there. And so that's a great point you made.
Yeah, it's very important. I'm the same way as you. I'll overwork or pack my schedule and not realize I I didn't even spend time processing any of that. I
Yeah.
just did work, 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 do. And yeah, people might praise you for that, or you might get a lot done, but you're gonna miss a lot in the process. And so I think that's always the battle with doing lots of different roles now,
Hmm.
being a dad and trying to help coach things and trying to run the nonprofit and help with the nonprofit and do my speaking events and help with the Cubs at times. Like I get if I'm naming these roles, like it's a lot to try to keep up with. And I fight with my schedule to say, where am I gonna every Tuesday, 12 to 1, I'm trying to make my men's group where I'm processing, and before our champion forward meetings, oftentimes we'll say, hey, we got to practice what we preach. So the first 10 or 15 minutes is us processing as a team together. what we're all feeling as individuals, what we're bringing into the room before we start to execute and work. So these are things that we have to build into our schedule. I need to build. There are times where I'm like, I need a whole week that I got to be alone in Utah,
Mm.
or something like that, because I love going to Utah. I've got lots of fun things in the mountains I like to do out there, right? Or I need to just go sit on a beach for a couple days, and process. Or I just need to be alone for 5 hours by myself, me and God, just talking and processing some things. Take that time when you need to take it. That's actually where your most inspiration and your best moments of learning who you are and who God is are going to come. I believe you got to have that time of solitude, turning this thing off, turn the device off, right? During that period of time where nobody can reach you. And that's a powerful, important time, I think.
That's great. Great advice. So towards the end of our podcast, I like to do a little fun thing with the guest is I have a 1 minute lightning round to see how many questions you can answer with short answers.
Let's do
Um,
it.
yeah, I know you're a competitor, so I think you're ready for this. So here's our timer. We got 1 minute, and let me pull up my questions. Okay, you ready?
I think I'm not good with quick answers, but let's go.
We'll try our best. Okay. What was your favorite MLB stadium besides Wrigley?
Fenway.
Most intimidating pitcher you ever faced?
Ooh. Roger Clemens.
Who made you laugh the most in the clubhouse?
Tommy LaStella.
Uh, what is your favorite post-game meal?
Oh, pasta, meat, and salad.
Ooh. Favorite hobby now that you're retired?
Snowboarding.
Yes. If you weren't a baseball player, you would have been.
Probably a youth pastor.
And if you had a walk-up song now, what would it be?
Oh, walk up song now. Oh, this is a tough one. My minute's up. I
That's
don't know.
okay.
I don't know.
What type of music are you listening to nowadays? What do you like to listen to?
You know what? One of my favorite artists is Ben Rector. I
Ah,
love
yeah.
Rector's stuff, his new stuff. There's a guy that I just met last year that I love his stuff too. Is Blessing Offer is his name.
Yeah, yes.
Blessing, he's got amazing, dude. His voice and his ability with the piano too, unbelievable, right? So
Hmm.
those are a couple guys I really enjoy. There's many more I'm missing. I listen to a lot of music, different kinds
Sure.
of music too. I'll do a little bit of a closet country fan at times, being in Nashville.
Okay.
Uh, and I can, out at the farm, I'll wear my boots here and there. So, but I'm probably more upbeat, kind of piano pop type of person with
I love
music.
that. I love that. That's my type of music, but I love all genres and learning these different artists. So that was a great question to end on, and thanks for taking on the challenge. So
Absolutely.
Ben, this has been just an absolute pleasure. Thank you again for the pet talk during the podcast. I appreciated that. And it's given me and I assume our listeners just a lot of great advice and lessons and just way to focus their attention, just balancing their life. So thank you for addressing that. I'm excited to see what comes from Champion Forward, and I hope people go check that out. Where can they check it out again?
Champion Forward on Instagram
Okay.
and also championforward.org.
.org.
That's our website, so they'll find all the stuff with that. And they can also go to my Instagram and get connection there through my link tree as well. Ben Zobrist 18.
Awesome. Well, Ben, thank you so much for being on the Sheckler Spotlight. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Harrison. And it's cool seeing all the stuff you're doing too. I appreciate you reaching out.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Sheckler Spotlight with your host, Harrison Sheckler. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the show with a friend. New conversations drop regularly, so stay tuned. And thanks again for listening and being a part of the journey. Follow Harrison Sheckler on social media and visit harrisonsheckler.com to learn more.